So you'll have to install the certificate role in Windows 2012 Server, or you could do this in 2008 as well. So I'll just talk briefly here in this slide deck about how to install the certificate role and how it's configured. So there are different types of CAs. You have a couple different options. You have standalone and enterprise CAs, online or offline CAs, and then we also have to be aware of CA hierarchy and certificate practice statements. So standalone versus enterprise. So an enterprise CA is a server running Windows Server 2012 with the role installed, the Active Directory Certificate Services role installed. A standalone CA is a server running Windows Server 2003 with the role installed, but with no active or very little Active Directory integration. Now the thing is, if you have devices that are non-Windows devices on your network, then you're probably going to need at least one standalone CA. So you would probably have both of these configured both ways. At least two servers on your network providing these services. Although in many cases you'll have more than two of these services. So here's just a quick chart. This is from the textbook I'm using for the course in this semester. So it shows you the difference between a standalone CA server and an enterprise CA server. So a standalone, you don't have to have Active Directory. You can operate offline. Certificates requests have to be approved manually. You've probably seen in Windows how to do that when you have to manually approve a certificate to make it trusted. There's no certificate templates available. Certificates are not published in Active Directory. The requester must enter identifying information certificate requests manually. CAs are distributed to clients manually. CRLs are optionally published to Active Directory but don't have to be. Whereas on the enterprise side, this is where we have tighter integration to Active Directory, so it's required on an enterprise CA server. It has to operate, it must be in online mode. Certificate requests are automatic, but although manual works as well. Certificate templates are available. Certificates are published in Active Directory, again helping with the automation. Identifying information taken from Active Directory for requesting a certificate. CAs are distributed to clients automatically, and CRLs are published automatically to Active Directory. You can see here that with Enterprise CA Server, a lot of the tasks are automated through Active Directory. So if a CA is compromised, all the certificates the CA has issued are also compromised and have to be revoked, and that's what the CRL does for us. CRLs allow you to revoke a certificate. So it's sort of like when you, if you ever get pulled over and you had a couple drinks and you get a DWI and they revoke your driver's license. There's two ways they can do that. They can take your driver's license from you, so you no longer have it. But they can also, have some kind of list somewhere informing the authorities that you're no longer authorized to drive your motor vehicle. That way, you can still have a driver's license for identification, but but if a police officer pulls you over, they'll be able to see that you're not permitted to drive a car anymore. So that's kind of like a CRL. So with offline CAs, you're not connected to the network, so it makes it difficult to do certificate revocation lists. So you have to do it with removable media since it's offline. The root CA is the server most typically configured for offline operation, and offline CAs must also be standalone CAs. So there are certainly times that you'll use an offline CA. And as far as the hierarchy goes, so the way certificate services work, you always have a root CA. On the internet, there are root CAs, and this is who you pay for. If you're going to do SSL with a website that you own, you'll probably purchase a certificate from a root CA, or from some certificate authority. You'll create a request, you'll install the certificate, and you'll be able to offer encryption to your users. And really what you're doing with that certificate, it's not so much about the encryption, it's about identifying who you are and validating who you are, so that if somebody goes to your website, they know that you are a trusted, that you're the one that actually requested that certificate. Which is especially useful if you're going to be giving somebody your credit card number, right? It's important to know that you can trust that person. So we have to create a root CA in our own enterprise network, so that's what the root CA is. And then other servers will, so the root CA is the source of truth for a certificate as the certificate authority, but certificates can be issued through other servers that are subordinate, and that's that hierarchical, hierarchy. So there's two types of hierarchy with Windows. There's the 2-level hierarchy and the 3-level hierarchy. And let's take a look at a picture of this here. On the left, you see the 2-level, where we have a root CA, and then there are issuing servers below the root CA. So the issuing servers are using the root CA as the source of truth and issuing those certificates directly. Whereas with the 3-tier, we have a root CA. You have intermediaries between the root CAs and the issuers. So the issuers are going through an intermediary to get to the root CA. So it's a much more distributed architecture, and this would be good for high availability and if you need to reduce the workload on the root CA. So that's basically how that works. A practice statement or a certificate practice statement, a CPS, is a document that describes how a CA issues certificates. This is not required for PKI, but it's used in Active Directory. So the CPS will usually include these components that you see on the slideshow. So it's identification of the CA, security practices used to maintain CA integrity, types of certificates used, policies and procedures that are used, cryptographic algorithms that are used, certificate lifetime, CRL-related policies, including where CRL distribution points are located, renewal policy of the CA certificate. If you need to do this, you will be do this by creating an INF file called CA policy, and you will place it into the system root directory on the CA. So that would be on the root CA server. So to install the role, so first of all, the role, the certificate services role should not be installed, even though it's called Active Directory Certificate Services. It should not be installed on a domain controller. It could be, it'll work, you can do it, but it's not recommended. However, it is a requirement if you're installing an enterprise CA that you have to put it on a server that is a member of the domain. If you're doing a standalone, it's not necessarily required to be on a member server, but I don't know why exactly you would do this without having Active Directory. Usually if you don't have Active Directory, your network is probably not sophisticated enough or large enough to need something like this. So in any event, enterprise CAs can be installed on any member server that's running Windows Server 2008 or later. In all likelihood, you'll probably do this in 2012 if you're gearing this towards a 2012 network, but also you could use 2016. So ADS is installed by adding the role in Server Manager, just like most of the other roles that we've talked about in the previous course. So during the installation, you have the option to install some role services, including the following. So you'll have the Certificate Authority, Certificate Enrollment Policy Web Service, the Certificate Enrollment Web Service, Certificate Authority Web Enrollment, Network Device Enrollment Service, and Online Responder. So you have the option to install all of these. I usually just install everything so I have it in case I need it. But this is basically how you install the role. It's a fairly simple process that you'll go through to install it. And in the next slide deck, I'm going to talk about how to configure the certificate authority. So we'll discuss that next.